We've finally reached episode 9 of the Summer I Turned Pretty season 3. And this one isn't just another episode, it feels like the turning point of the entire story. The fallout from Belly and Jeremiah's breakup, Conrad's heartbreaking goodbye, and that shocking final moment before Belly leaves for Paris has left us all desperate to know what comes next. And episode 9 is where emotions explode, choices become impossible to avoid, and secrets that were buried start clawing their way to the surface. Trust me, what happens here doesn't just decide Belly's future, it decides the fate of everyone around her. So let's dive straight into how episode 9 changes everything we thought we knew about cousins, about love, and about what it really means to choose between the past and the future. Belly's Paris trip is the centerpiece of this episode, and honestly, it's more than just a trip. It's her escape, her way of running from the chaos, heartbreak, and guilt that's been chasing her ever since the wedding fell apart. But here's the thing, no matter how far she runs, she can't leave behind the emotions tied to Conrad and Jeremiah. The image of Conrad standing there in the last scene of episode 8 keeps haunting her. And no matter how determined she is to move forward, the pull of what could have been just won't let go. This episode takes that tension and cranks it up, making us question if Belly's really in Paris to discover herself, or if deep down, she's hoping Conrad or even Jeremiah will follow her. And when we talk about Belly, we can't just ignore the weight she's carrying. Think about it, she left Jeremiah shattered, she left Conrad convinced he had to let her go, and she left Stephen and Taylor in the middle of their own mess. Every step she takes in Paris is heavy with guilt, but it's also loaded with possibility. Is Paris her chance to break free? Or is it just another stage where this love triangle keeps repeating? And let's be honest, Jeremiah's reaction after the breakup isn't something that just disappears overnight. The way he told Conrad, "You're dead to me," wasn't just about losing Belly, it was about betrayal from his own brother. That line echoes through episode 9 like a warning. Jeremiah is unpredictable now, and his pain makes him dangerous in ways we haven't seen before. We've watched him be the sweet, loyal one for so long, but heartbreak changes people, and I can already feel that Jeremiah's choices in this episode are going to shock us all. Whether he actually follows Belly to Paris or throws himself into a completely different path, his story no longer runs on patience and hope, it runs on anger, pride, and the desire to prove that he's more than just Conrad's shadow. But don't think Conrad has it any easier. Episode 9 digs deep into his guilt and regret, showing us a side of him that's both heartbreaking and frustrating. He's the guy who always sacrifices his happiness for others, but this time, that sacrifice feels like self-destruct. Remember, Conrad stayed behind in Cousins before because Belly was sad. Now, even after letting her go, he can't stop himself from hovering at the edges of her world. If Belly is in Paris, every second of Conrad's story in this episode makes us wonder, will he let her go for real? Or will he once again change his entire life to prove that his love isn't just words, it's action? The suspense here is brutal because Conrad's not just fighting for Belly, he's fighting for his own identity. Is he the selfless brother who always gives up? Or is he the man who finally decides to take what his heart wants, even if it costs him everything? And then we've got Belly caught between these two brothers, with Paris as the perfect backdrop for her confusion. Episode 9 throws her into moments where she questions not just who she loves, but who she is. Think about it, when she's with Conrad, she feels alive, like the world fades and only they exist. But with Jeremiah, she had safety, stability, and the promise of a future she thought she wanted. Now, with both of them standing on opposite sides of her memories, Belly's left asking herself, what does she really want when no one else is watching? That's the true core of episode 9, forcing Belly to strip away the noise and confront her own truth. And believe me, the way this truth starts to creep out is going to leave us shaken. What makes episode 9 so powerful is how every character is standing at a crossroads. Jeremiah with his broken heart and growing rage, Conrad with his regrets and his endless struggle between letting go and holding on, Belly with her impossible choice between running away and finally facing her feelings. Even Stephen and Taylor, who just found their way back to each other, become a mirror of what true understanding and patience looks like. In contrast to the chaos surrounding Belly, every storyline connects back to the central question: is love about sacrifice, or is it about fighting for what you can't live without? And by the end of this episode, we're going to realize the answer isn't simple, it never was. That's just the beginning of what episode 9 sets up, and already, the weight of it is enough to make your heart race, because this isn't just about Belly's love life anymore, it's about family bonds breaking, personal identities being tested, and the idea that sometimes the hardest battles aren't against others, but against ourselves. So buckle up, because if you thought episode 8 was intense, episode 9 takes that pain, multiplies it, and then dares us to imagine what could possibly come in episode 10. Episode 9 wastes no time pulling us back into the fallout from Belly's choices. And the truth is, everything that happened in episode 8 still lingers in the air like smoke after a fire. Belly thought leaving for Paris would give her a clean start. But heartbreak doesn't just vanish because you hop on a plane, it travels with you, sits heavy in your chest, and whispers in your ear when you're trying to move forward. Belly is living with that now. She wanted Paris to be her escape, but instead, it becomes her mirror. Every street she walks down, every cafe she sits in, feels like a reminder that love is messy, unpredictable, and impossible to run from. The way Belly looked at Conrad in that final moment of episode 8 told us everything. There are still deep, unresolved feelings she hasn't faced, and in episode 9, those feelings hit her harder than ever. She tries to push forward, convincing herself that leaving Jeremiah behind was the right thing to do. But deep down she knows the breakup wasn't just about choosing herself. It was about choosing honesty, finally admitting to both brothers and to herself that her heart never truly let Conrad go. That realization follows her like a shadow in this episode. Even when she tries to focus on her new life in Paris, her mind keeps circling back to cousins, back to Conrad, back to the love she's never been able to bury. And that's where the real suspense comes in, because if Belly is finally ready to admit that Conrad was always the one, then the question becomes, is Conrad ready to believe it? His farewell speech in episode 8 made it look like he was done fighting, like he had finally stepped aside for Jeremiah. But deep down, Conrad's never been the type to stop loving just because it hurts. In episode 9, we see the weight of that choice crushing him. He tries to focus on school, on his plans, on moving forward without Belly, but every time he tries, something drags him back. It could be a memory, it could be something Taylor says, or it could even be Jeremiah's anger reminding him just how far things have gone. Whatever it is, Conrad realizes that letting go isn't as easy as he wanted it to be. His love for Belly is the one thing that defines him, and the longer he tries to deny it, the more it tears him apart. Jeremiah, on the other hand, is a whole different storm in this episode. If Belly thought breaking up with him would set him free, she couldn't be more wrong. Jeremiah doesn't just feel betrayed by Belly, he feels betrayed by Conrad, by his family, by fate itself. This isn't the easygoing Jeremiah we've known all this time. Episode 9 shows us the darker side of him, the Jeremiah who refuses to be second best anymore. That line, "You're dead to me," wasn't just about Conrad, it was about Jeremiah cutting ties with the version of himself that always played nice, always stepped aside, always sacrificed. Now he's stepping into something new, and it's dangerous because it comes from anger and pride. That's why I believe Jeremiah's next move in this episode shocks everyone. Whether he chases Belly to Paris or throws himself into work with his dad, it's not about love anymore, it's about proving that he's stronger than the heartbreak that nearly destroyed him. And if Jeremiah does show up in Paris, imagine the tension. Conrad, Belly, Jeremiah all in the same city, all standing face to face with feelings they've tried to bury. That's not just drama, that's a time bomb waiting to go off. But while the love triangle dominates, episode 9 also pulls Steven and Taylor back into the spotlight. Their reunion in episode 8 felt like a breath of fresh air in the middle of all the heartbreak. And now their story becomes a contrast to Belly's. Steven and Taylor aren't perfect, but they're growing together, learning how to communicate, how to fight for each other without tearing each other apart. Episode 9 shows us that their bond is what love looks like when it matures. They don't run from conflict, they face it head on, and in a way, their relationship serves as the mirror Belly desperately needs, because if Belly wants a real future with Conrad or even Jeremiah, it can't be built on confusion, lies, and indecision. It has to be built on the kind of honesty and maturity Steven and Taylor are just beginning to master. Watching them side by side in this episode really highlights the difference between love that destroys and love that heals. And let's not forget, Susanna's shadow still looms over all of this. Her letter in episode 8 shook Jeremiah to his core, but its impact doesn't stop there. Both Conrad and Belly are still haunted by what she believed that Belly and Conrad were always meant to be. That belief feels like both a blessing and a curse in episode 9. For Conrad, it's pressure he doesn't want but can't ignore. For Belly, it's a reminder that her indecision hurt not just the boys, but the memory of the woman who tied their family together. And for Jeremiah, it's salt in the wound, proof that even his mother never saw him as Belly's forever. That's why Susanna's presence, even in memory, keeps this love triangle alive long after it should have ended. Episode 9 reminds us that some ghosts don't fade, they guide, they push, they tear people apart from beyond the grave. By the time we reach the middle of this episode, everything feels heavier, sharper, more dangerous. Belly's choices are no longer just about Romance there about survival. Conrad's silence is no longer just about sacrifice. It's about whether he even knows who he is without Belly. And Jeremiah's pain is no longer just about heartbreak, it's about identity. About being seen, about finally taking control of his own story. Every scene pushes us closer to an explosion and you can feel it building. Episode 9 isn't just another step in the series, it's the fuse being lit. And we're all just waiting to see how hard it blows. Episode 9 digs even deeper into Belly's emotional state, and this is where the cracks really start to show. She thought that putting an ocean between herself and the Fisher brothers would bring peace. But instead, it only magnifies the conflict inside her. Paris should be about fresh starts, new friends, new adventures. A chance to grow up away from the drama, but the truth no matter how far she travels. Belly can't run away from the memories. She sees Conrad in quiet moments, hears Jeremiah's voice when she's walking through crowded streets. And the weight of everything that happened back home clings to her like a second skin. This isn't freedom, this is exile, and deep down, Belly knows it. And this is where the suspense really thickens. Because Paris doesn't just symbolize escape, it becomes the battleground. For Belly's heart, every choice she makes in this city matters more than ever. Is she really going to let herself start over? Or will she finally stop running and face the truth she's been denying since the beginning? For the audience, this is frustrating and exciting at the same time. We want Belly to finally pick a side. But watching her wrestle with it shows us just how torn she really is. Every time she imagines a future, it's always split into one life with Conrad, another with Jeremiah, and as much as she wants to move forward, the ghosts of what could have been are always waiting around the corner. Back in the States, Jeremiah's rage is still burning. His words to Conrad, "You're dead to me," weren't just a flare-up in the heat of the moment. They were a declaration, a line he doesn't intend to walk back. Episode 9 shows Jeremiah breaking away from everything that tied him to Conrad and Belly. If he's not chasing Belly to Paris, he's burying himself in something else. Maybe his father's world, maybe a future built on hard work and shedding out his past. But here's the dangerous part. Jeremiah's heartbreak has twisted into pride. And pride can make a person reckless. When you're carrying that much anger, every decision feels like a test. And Jeremiah isn't thinking about love anymore, he's thinking about survival. He wants to prove that he doesn't need Belly, doesn't need Conrad, doesn't even need anyone's sympathy, but underneath all that fire, we know the truth: he's hurting more than anyone else. That's what makes him unpredictable in this episode. He could explode, he could disappear, or he could make a move that shocks everyone, and that uncertainty keeps us on edge the whole time. Conrad, meanwhile, is in his own quiet war. He made his big sacrifice in episode 8, choosing to step aside and let Belly go. But the question is, can he really live with that choice? This episode keeps reminding us that Conrad's strength and weakness are the same thing he loves too deeply. He can't just flip a switch and erase Belly from his life. And as much as he tries to convince himself he's done, the truth keeps creeping back in. Episode 9 forces Conrad to look at himself, not just as Belly's love, not just as Jeremiah's rival, but as his own person, and that's what makes his storyline so compelling here. Will he let himself fade into the background like he always does? Or will he finally claim something for himself, even if it means facing Jeremiah's fury head-on? Conrad's every move feels like it's carrying the weight of years of pain, regret, and longing. And you can't help but wonder, will this be the moment he finally chooses himself? But what makes episode 9 even heavier is the way Susanna's presence lingers. Her belief that Conrad and Belly were always destined to be together isn't just in Jeremiah's head anymore, it hangs over all of them like a prophecy. For Belly, it's both comforting and terrifying. She wonders if maybe she's been fighting against fate all this time. For Conrad, it feels like a responsibility he doesn't want. Because love that comes from expectation isn't love at all, it's pressure. And for Jeremiah, it's betrayal from beyond the grave. Proof that even his own mother didn't see him as the one. This unshakable shadow of Susanna keeps the tension alive, reminding us that this story was never just about 30 teenagers in love. It's about family, legacy, and the way one woman's belief shaped their lives even after she was gone. And then there's Stephen and Taylor. While Belly drowns in confusion, they become the anchor of this episode. Their love isn't perfect, but it's real. They've fought, broken up, gotten back together, and now they're stronger because of it. Episode 9 shows them working through their insecurities, not running from them. And when you compare that to Belly's situation, it's impossible not to see the contrast. Stephen and Taylor prove that love isn't just about big romantic gestures, it's about patience, about being willing to grow through the hard parts. Their relationship feels like a glimpse of what Belly could have if she stopped running, stopped hiding, and finally admitted what her heart wanted. They're the light in an episode that's otherwise consumed by heartbreak, and that balance makes the drama even more intense. By the time we move further into episode 9, it's clear that every character is standing on the edge of something bigger. Belly is in Paris, but she's still chained to cousins by her feelings. Conrad is torn between sacrifice and desire, between letting go and fighting back. Jeremiah is consumed by anger, trying to rebuild himself out of the ashes of betrayal. And Stephen and Taylor are showing what it means to fight for love the right way. It all feels like the calm before the storm, the quiet moments before something massive breaks, and the way this episode builds that suspense makes it impossible to look away. You can feel it in your chest, something is about to give, and when it does, nothing will ever be the same. As episode 9 pushes deeper, the pressure on Belly reaches a breaking point. Paris was supposed to be her escape, but instead, it's becoming a mirror, forcing her to see every decision she's tried to bury. When she sits alone at night, surrounded by strangers in a city that should feel romantic, all she feels is the weight of two voices, Conrad's and Jeremiah's. One part of her hears Jeremiah's laughter, the way he promised her he'd always be there, the comfort of someone who loved her without hesitation. But then, just as strong, she hears Conrad's words, the quiet confessions, the subtle moments where he let his guard down and showed her that his love, though complicated, was deeper than anything she had ever known. And this is what makes Belly's turmoil so gripping. In episode 9, she isn't choosing between two boys anymore. She's choosing between two versions of herself, because Jeremiah's love represents stability, safety, the idea of moving forward without looking back. With him, she could build something steady, something that feels like a promise. But Conrad's love is different. It's wild, it's consuming. It's the kind of love that feels like it defines your entire life. With Conrad, there's no halfway, it's all or nothing. And for Belly, who has always tried to balance everyone's feelings, that choice is terrifying. The more Paris pushes her to think, the clearer it becomes that whichever path she chooses, she'll lose something huge, and that's what keeps us glued to her every move, because deep down, we know she can't keep running forever. Meanwhile, Jeremiah is slipping into dangerous territory. His heartbreak has hardened into something sharp, something that cuts not just others, but himself too. He throws himself into distractions, whether it's friends, parties, or reckless choices. It doesn't matter, anything to drown out the betrayal. But the thing about pain is, no matter how much you try to hide it, it has a way of showing through. And Jeremiah's every move in this episode feels like it's teetering between anger and collapse. What makes it so powerful is that for the first time, we see Jeremiah without his smile. Without that easy charm that always defined him. He's raw, stripped down. And his vulnerability makes him unpredictable. Will he lash out at Conrad again? Will he try to confront Belly even from miles away? Or will he spiral so far into his pain that he shuts them both out forever? The suspense comes from knowing that whatever Jeremiah does next, it's going to change everything. And then there's Conrad. His storyline in episode 9 is quieter but no less intense. After years of being the one who held everything in, the one who sacrificed for the sake of others, Conrad is finally faced with himself. The question is simple but heavy: who is Conrad Fisher without Belly, without Jeremiah, without the weight of being the one Susanna always believed in? And the more the episode unfolds, the more it feels like Conrad is standing on the edge of a decision that could redefine him completely. He doesn't say much, but his silence speaks volumes. Every look, every hesitation tells us that he's torn between letting Belly go for good and fighting for her one last time. And if we know anything about Conrad, it's that his heart doesn't let go easily. That quiet intensity, the way he suffers in silence, is exactly what makes his presence so haunting in this episode. Even when he's not with Belly, you feel him in every scene. Stephen and Taylor, on the other hand, are proof that love can survive the storms. Their relationship isn't perfect, but it's grounded in honesty. Episode 9 shows them having those real, uncomfortable conversations that Belly has been avoiding. They admit their fears, their doubts, and instead of letting those break them apart, they use them to grow closer. And watching them, you can't help but think this is the blueprint. This is what it looks like when two people choose each other every day, no matter what. Stephen and Taylor's love story isn't filled with grand gestures or impossible choices, but it's strong, and that strength shines through in contrast to Belly's indecision. Their scenes feel like a light in the darkness, reminding us that love doesn't always have to be chaos. It can be steady, patient, and real. But the real twist of episode 9 comes from the way the story ties the past to the present. Susanna's shadow is everywhere. Her belief in Conrad and Belly wasn't just a passing thought, it was a legacy, and now it feels like everyone is either living under it or trying to break free from it. For Jeremiah, it's a wound that won't close. For Conrad, it's a burden he never asked for. And for Belly, it's a question she can't stop asking: was her heart always destined for Conrad? Or does she have the power to rewrite her own future? This tension gives episode 9 a haunting quality because it's no longer just about young love, it's about fate, about the weight of expectations, and about whether love is something you choose or something that chooses you. By the time this section closes, the tension is unbearable. Belly is lost in Paris, caught between the life she wants to create and the life she can't let go of. Jeremiah is unraveling, building walls so high even he might not be able to tear them down. Conrad is silently battling his own demons, questioning whether sacrifice is strength or weakness. And Stephen and Taylor are standing strong, proving that love is possible if you're brave enough to face it. All of these threads are tightening, pulling us closer to the inevitable moment when everything snaps. Episode 9 isn't just moving the story forward, it's setting the stage for an explosion. And we can feel it coming with every passing scene. Episode 9 takes a darker turn as the weight of every unspoken word finally begins to press down on the characters. Belly can no longer hide from the choices she's been running from in Paris. Her world feels bigger but lonelier, as if the universe itself is forcing her to sit still and confront her heart. She keeps replaying the moments that brought her here: Jeremiah's smile, Conrad's eyes, Susanna's voice telling her to follow her heart. But instead of clarity, every memory pulls her into directions. And that's the real heartbreak of Belly's journey. She wants to choose, she wants to move forward, but her heart refuses to let go of either boy. In this episode, the audience feels her unraveling. Not because she doesn't know what love is, but because she knows it too deeply. She's learning that love doesn't come in perfect shapes, it's messy, painful, and sometimes impossible to carry. Meanwhile, Jeremiah's storyline begins to mirror the storm inside Belly. We see a side of him that we haven't seen before: reckless, raw, almost destructive. He's always been the boy who lit up the room, who made everyone feel at ease. But in episode 9, that mask starts to crumble. He's pushing people away, trying to drown himself in anything that numbs the ache. But pain has a way of finding you, and Jeremiah's pain is catching up to him. The more he tries to bury it, the louder it gets. His heartbreak isn't just about Belly, it's about trust, about betrayal, about realizing that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. Watching Jeremiah spiral is both heartbreaking and terrifying because we know he's not just fighting for Belly anymore, he's fighting for himself. The question is, will he find a way back before it's too late? Conrad, on the other hand, moves through this episode like a ghost. His silence is haunting, his restraint almost unbearable to watch. He's carrying the weight of everyone's expectations, but for the first time, he's starting to question if he even wants that burden anymore. What makes his role in episode 9 so gripping is that Conrad isn't chasing. He isn't begging, he's waiting. And that waiting is powerful because it's no longer about desperation, it's about strength. About letting Belly see who he truly is without the walls, without the masks. Conrad has always been the one who loves in silence, but now his silence feels like a challenge. It's as if he's telling Belly, if you love me, you'll know; if you don't, then let me go. That quiet strength is dangerous because it makes his presence even harder to ignore. Belly may be in Paris, but Conrad is everywhere, in her thoughts, in her doubts, in every beat of her heart. And then there's Stephen and Taylor. In the middle of all this chaos, they shine as the counterpoint. Their relationship, though still young, shows what it means to fight for each other instead of against each other. Episode 9 gives us a glimpse into how they handle conflict honestly, directly, without running away, and that honesty becomes the thing Belly is missing the most. Watching Stephen and Taylor reminds us that love isn't just about passion or destiny, it's about choice. It's about showing up even when it's hard. And maybe that's the quiet message of this episode, that love isn't about who makes your heart race the fastest, but who makes your soul feel safe. But the tension doesn't stop there. Episode 9 drops subtle hints that the story is heading toward a breaking point. Small moments: Jeremiah's anger boiling over, Belly's tears in the quiet corners of Paris, Conrad staring into the distance like he's holding back words that could shatter everything. All of it builds a sense of dread. You know something is coming even if you can't see it yet. And that's what makes this episode so powerful. It isn't about big confrontations or explosive fights, it's about the slow, steady tightening of the rope around every character. With each passing scene, the knots get tighter, and you can feel the snap approaching. By the end of the section, the suspense is almost unbearable. Belly is standing at a crossroads, paralyzed by the weight of her own heart. Jeremiah is slipping further into the darkness of his heartbreak. Conrad is quietly waiting, his love burning just as strong, but hidden behind restraint. And Stephen and Taylor are proving that love, when honest, can survive anything. Episode 9 isn't about answers, it's about pressure. And with so much building beneath the surface, one thing is certain: the final moments of this episode won't just break hearts, they'll change everything. The last stretch of episode 9 pulls no punches, it's raw, it's heavy, and it leaves you with that pit in your stomach you can't shake off. Belly is at her breaking point. Paris feels like an escape, but it's also a mirror, showing her everything she's been avoiding. She walks the streets at night, replaying Jeremiah's laughter, Conrad's quiet strength, and Susanna's voice telling her that love was supposed to be beautiful. But right now, it doesn't feel beautiful at all, it feels like drowning. Belly realizes she can't outrun her feelings anymore. Paris may be far from Cousin's beach, but her heart never left, and as she sits there, torn between the boy who loves her out loud and the boy who loves her in silence, the weight of her choice becomes almost unbearable. At the same time, Jeremiah's storyline is the rawest we've ever seen it. He's hurt, he's angry. But beneath that anger is fear of losing Belly, fear of losing himself. Episode 9 shows him in moments of real vulnerability, moments that remind us that he isn't just the golden boy, he's fragile too. And that fragility is dangerous because it makes him unpredictable. The question hanging over Jeremiah is whether he can rise above the pain or let it consume him, and watching him teeter on that edge is terrifying. Every decision he makes in this episode feels like it could shatter not only his relationship with Belly but his bond with Conrad forever. Conrad, though, continues to haunt the episode with his quiet presence. He's not begging, he's not pushing, but his absence in Paris is louder than anyone's voice. Belly feels him everywhere, in the way she hesitates before answering Jeremiah, in the way her heart aches in silence, in the way her dreams at night pull her back to Cousins. Conrad's love has always been complicated, but in this episode, it's undeniable. He isn't chasing her anymore, he's standing still, waiting, and that waiting, that steady strength, becomes the very thing that makes Belly's decision so much harder. Because sometimes the loudest love isn't the one that shouts, it's the one that simply stays. Stephen and Taylor's story continues to bring balance, but even they can feel the storm coming. Their relationship is solid, yes, but they're not immune to the ripple effects of Belly, Jeremiah, and Conrad's triangle. Episode 9 shows that even the strongest bonds can be tested when secrets linger. They offer hope, yes, but also a reminder that love requires constant honesty. Taylor's quiet advice to Belly, raw, unfiltered, and real, might just be the push Belly needs. But whether Belly listens is another story, and then comes the twist. Episode 9 doesn't end with a neat resolution, it ends with a gut punch. Just when you think Belly is ready to make her choice, something happens that throws everything into chaos. A call, a letter, a revelation, something that rips through the fragile balance the characters have been clinging to. The screen fades with more questions than answers, leaving us gasping, desperate to know what happens next. Will Belly finally choose Jeremiah or Conrad? Will Jeremiah's pain push him too far? Will Conrad's silence prove stronger than words? And what about the friendships? Will they survive the fallout of this love triangle? Or are they doomed to break apart forever? Episode 9 of Season 3 doesn't just give us drama, it gives us the kind of suspense that lingers long after it ends. It's not just about who Belly ends up with, it's about the cost of love, the weight of choice, and the way heartbreak can shape who we become. As the credits roll, one thing is certain, nothing will ever be the same again, and with the finale waiting just around the corner, all we can do is brace ourselves for the storm that's about to hit.